Hi guys, Tugu here with a new video, and this video will be a Shadow Priest PvP guide video for 10.2.5 of Dragonflight Season 3, and we got a few buffs. I want to talk about it really briefly, but let's talk about a few things. We're going to talk about stats, embellishments, also the Tierset, if you should go for or not, and also we're going to talk about the few builds I have for Shadow Priest, which you have a few things that you can change here and there, but also PvP talents, which one you should go for at what time. I will also discuss about that. I'm also going to discuss about a few comps you can play in 2s, in 3s, Soul Shuffle, because I played a lot of them, and we are going to talk about also the rotation and what you should do whenever you're getting focused and what you should do whenever you're not focused, because some games, there are games where you're not focused. And then we're going to talk about the macros, because I think it's very important. There are a few macros that you can use and that are actually very, very useful as a Shadow Priest and kind of unlearns a few bad habits. Now, let's talk about Shadow Priest. First and foremost, why Shadow Priest? It's a immobile spec, doesn't have like instant damage that some specs has. You still have a lot of setup to do, and to be honest, it is not flashy. Why Shadow Priest? Well, if you like having agency on your CC, if you like to have agency on CDs and usages of your CDs, agency on defensives, because again you have Void Shift, you have also Dispersion, you have a Disparate Prayer, you have also a Leap of Faith that you can use on your other caster ally. For example, if you're playing 3s or 2s, you can save them from a Death Sweep, for example. You have BI, which is probably one of the best CDs you can use on an ally. You also have some great damage and some big thorns damage actually, because again, I'm going to talk about that a bit further down the line, but you have thorns damage, and even though it's not called thorns and even though it's not directly whenever someone hits you, it can actually hit back very, very hard. But I'm going to talk about that as well. So if you want to play Shadow Priest, I strongly suggest to learn it. To accept the fact that you're going to get drained, to accept the fact that you're going to have difficulties in some matchups, especially in Soul Shuffle if healers are doing something else, like for example they're going for damage instead of healing you. That's a big no-no with a Shadow Priest, for example. There are multiple ways where you can play around it, but I'm going to talk about that as well in this video. Now let's talk about stats. So the stats that I'm going for is probably not the meta stats, but I do like it. And since I also play Disc Priest a bit, I mean, I play a lot these days, but whatever. I play also Disc Priest these days, and those stats kind of correlate with Disc Priest as well. So that's a good thing. So I decided to test mostly Mastery with a bit of Haste. And a bit of haste is actually a lot of haste because I have double trinket, but often or not I do play with normal trinket. So my normal haste would be 21%, but if I take the Verdant of Spirit badge of ferocity, as I am a human, I get like around 25-26% haste, which is quite nice still. We have like 29% versatility in PvP. I will show you on the dummies. I have like around 18% mastery, which is around 5k mastery, 5k 5, something like that. And the mastery is actually something like some people overlook it, but I think, again, the more you play with, the more likely you're going to do a lot of damage. I made a video yesterday basically showing you a 300k mind spike insanity on a hunter. I mean, that's something you can only achieve if you have a lot of mastery. But mastery, what does it do? Your damage is increased by 18%, because again in PvP it's a bit higher because of the stats. 18% for each of Shadow Word Pain, Vampiric Touch, and Devouring Plague on the target. So it is 18% times 3. It is actually just a similar mastery that a resto druid has with HOTS. The more HOTS you have, the more mastery percent you will have. Well, it's the same. The more dots you will have on the target, the more damage you will have on the target. And whenever you're in Void form, all targets receive the maximum effect. So it will at all times do maximum damage from your mastery. So if you're using your Dark Ascension, it is seen as your Void form. It will do some insane damage. You're going to achieve like 300k mind spikes. If you're doing a Void Torrent and those guys are not interrupting you, you can like go over 350k with just one channel. You have Devouring Plague critting for 200k. Even I got like yesterday. It's more likely 150k, but still it's a lot of damage for a Shadow Priest in my opinion. Your Shadow Word Pain does a lot of damage, and big spoiler, we're going for Foresight. I'm going to explain why in a second, but Shadow Word Pain does a lot of damage, and Catharsis does a lot of damage. Everything does a lot of damage. But let's talk about the embellishments first. Embellishments, very simple. You go for metal, which is on the belt that you can buy, like craft. It is Inferior's Binding of Gesticulation. It's Versatility Mastery, which is always nice, and especially if you're also playing Disc and you're also playing Holy Priest, it's good stats, so you should go for that. And my second one is the precog. Precog is very important. People are kicking you left, right, and center. And if you're doing a Void Torrent and you have Mindspike Insanity, you're doing Void Torrent, you can actually bait your Void Torrent to get kicked. So you can actually do Mindspike Insanities for equal damage, pretty much. So there are a few things that you can do. Also, spamming Flash Heal in front of them. They're going to have their trigger of, I need to kick, I need to kick, I need to kick. And then they're kicking you on Flash Heal, and then you can like be really, I would say, at ease with your Void Torrent and with Mindspike Insanities or Mind Games or whatever you're going to press. And especially Soul Shuffle, it's not coordinated, so people are like kicking at the same time, which gives you a CC immunity. And again, the only way you can actually safely die as a Shadow Priest is being CC'd. Dispersion is very strong, but you don't really want to disperse too soon. You want to trust your healer, and at one point, if it doesn't work and your fade is on cooldown and you have nothing left and you feel like you're going to die, you can either fear, but if they can break the fear with, like, say, a Berserker Rage, for example, you have to disperse. So you have to be very careful at that. And precog can actually give you the leisure to sometimes hold your disperse because you're not CC'd, so you can always Void Shift, or you can always Disparate Prayer, or you can always fear them. So you have tools to deal with it. So I think precog is like something that you should always go for. I saw some Shadow Priests play without it, and they play with Blue Lin and Silicon, but it feels like they're playing Disc Priest, so I don't know. I feel like this is, for me, the best combination for Shadow Priest, but also for Disc and also Holy Priest. So again, highly suggest that. And we made Haste Mastery because we don't want to overcap Versatility, but I will be soon testing a full Versatility build on one of my characters, because I feel like 10% reduction is maybe nothing compared to the extra survivability we could have with Versatility. But I will test that in the future. But for now, we run the Haste Mastery hands. We also have Haste Versatility neck, created for, again, to not get overcapped on Versatility, but I feel like Versatility is not something you should be scared of overcapping anyways, with a bit like being mindful. And that's overall it, right? Now I want to talk about the Foresight. I think people are a bit like wary about the Foresight because they feel like, look, it's giga nerfed in PvP. Let's be honest, like the Foresight itself is nerfed in PvP by half. So you're not going to do like a 500k Shadow Word Pain. That's not going to happen. But trust me, in most games, because of the Tierset and because of the Foresight, you can actually do a 100k Shadow Word Pain, which is like reliably done. You can really do that, and you can have a weak aura to track it, or you just watch it on your screen. And then you're going to press Shadow Word Pain, and you have like a Catharsis proc on them and the Shadow Word Pain. It's just an instant 200k on their faces. And people, they don't expect that. They're going to be 30% HP. They will feel like, oh, he's not casting, and then he gets like a Shadow Word Pain on their faces, and he just dies like a fly. So again, this is actually, in my opinion, a great Foresight. I can understand why people don't play that, but it feels like they're playing Disc Priest. Like it's not like they choose to not play Foresight. It's like they're not playing Foresight anyways as a Disc Priest, so why bother? But I feel like like the Foresight itself is incredibly strong. I can understand like some people are like saying no to it because again it's a proc and you have to build for it with Shadow Word Deaths and such. But I see positives. I see like Catharsis being there. I see also that I cannot cast anyway, so I'm going just to spam some Shadow Word Deaths. I'm going to try to do Devouring Plagues, trying to do some very Vampiric Touch on everyone. And once we can actually do some good damage with the Foresight and the Catharsis together, it can actually just delete someone. So I really like that. And I go for the legs, I go for the head, Mastery crit, I go for the shoulders, which is crit Mastery. And I go for the chest, which is mastery versatility. So again, people are scared about the stats allocation. I think mastery is a good stat for Shadow Priest. It just increases your damage. I think haste is indeed a very good stat for Shadow Priest as well. But I don't feel like I'm casting too much anyways, because I don't have like a lot of time to cast. And whenever I have time to cast, it's not like the extra 10% haste will help me to get those casts. And whenever I'm doing PI, I still have it, like I have plenty of haste to actually work with. That's from my testing. I tested also full haste at one point, but it felt like I'm getting kicked anyways. So it doesn't matter how much haste I get. Like, people are stopping me with stuns, fears, gouges, whatever. It's not like the extra 10% is going to help me. Now, I already see it coming. It's also increasing your dot damage, obviously, because the more haste you have, the more ticks you will have. That's cool, but I'm going to say that my Shadow Priest build is it's not revolving around dots. Your dots is significant. You're not going to kill anyone with dots. It's not like a affliction warlock where you have like 3 dots and it takes like often, it does a lot of damage, or a feral druid that does a feral frenzy and does 60k per hit per tick. This is not the case. This is really, look, I'm doing instant damage, I'm doing some direct damage in the hands of the Dark Ascension, and that is going to help me to land kills. I'm not going to rely on the dots on my targets. It's nice pad damage. It is going to bloat my numbers, but it is not going to give me the necessary damage to finish off a target, for example. This build is also ideally played with, let's say, a Destruction Warlock. You can also play with an Affliction Warlock if you want to. You can also play with an Assassination Rogue, so you don't really... You go for CC, but you don't want to, like, be greedy with your spells. You want to, like, press spells on everyone. You can also play with the Outlaw Rogue, which is very much a setup comp, and you can win setups pretty easily. You can also play with Demonology Warlock, which is a bit of like both. You can win with Dampening pretty much. You have multiple comps. You can play with a Warrior, which is also very fun for the Warrior. Not really for you, but for the Warrior, it's actually a very fun comp. You can also play with Elemental Shaman. I personally don't really like that because you don't have an MS effect, and you have Siphons, but people break it like directly anyways. You have multiple comps you can play that, but I'm going to talk about it after we did the builds. So that is pretty much it. Like, enchants is pretty like basic. Sophic Devotion. I go for some gems with versatility, haste to get like a bit of haste and a bit of versatility on my gear. I'm also dabbling into mastery crit and on both my head and my belt to see if, because I think crit is not a bad stat for Shadow Priest. It just is, you don't have the points to allocate that stat to. But the critting, again, you're not going to crit a 300k mind spike insanity if you have 0 crit. But you do crit a lot though. So again, I like that from Shadow Priest. It's very fun to play Shadow Priest in general. The rest is pretty standard. We play with speed. You can also play with avoidance, which is effectively reducing AoE damage. And AoE damage, Death Sweep is AoE damage. Blaze Storm is AoE damage. Whenever you get sweeping strikes, it is an AoE damage. Blade Fury, Flurry from Outlaw Rogues. You have multiple things that actually does AoE damage, and you would not think about that, but it actually reduces the damage. You can have 5% or 7% reduction, which is, again, acceptable. But personally, I prefer to play with speed. I like to be speedy. Let's talk about the builds. So the class tree, I'm going to talk really briefly about it because there are a few things that you can change depending on the comps you play, depending on if you're playing 2s in double DPS or what. This is pretty much my solo shuffle build. So the builds will be seen in the description, so you can always copy paste and test it for yourself. We're not playing with mind control. You don't have time to cast it. They are going for you anyways. But in 2s, you can actually do that. If you're playing with a Disc Priest, you can actually mind control the DPS, for example, whenever the Disc Priest is doing Ultimate Penitence, and every single bolt is going to go on the DPS, which is kind of satisfying to kill someone in a mind control. So that is also an option for you. But personally, I don't play that. I do play with Sheer Terror right now because it makes your fear like really hard to break. It can be broken again by if someone does a mortal strike and then you have your damage as well. It's going to break. But often than not, I can do like a Devouring Plague and even start my Void Torrent without it breaking. So that's actually a great thing. I really like Sheer Terror. I'm actually like loving it. And to be honest, I think it's not going to stay like this. I feel like fears are very, very strong right now. But again, we have cyclones being unbreakable and like undispellable only with mastery spell or trinket. So I think fear being stronger is okay. It should be polymorph also being stronger, but it's a bit harder for them to be buffed because again, how do you buff polymorph? But anyways, this is pretty much it. We also play with Psychic Voice for a lower CD on Fear. I don't like Petrifying Scream. I tested it. I felt like it's clunky. It's easier to line traps though if you're playing with a BM, but yeah, I think 30-second CD on Psychic Scream is quite nice. We do play with Protected Light, so if you're doing a flash heal on yourself, you're going to reduce 10% damage on yourself as well. It's additive with your versatility and with your base armor, for example. So you can be actually quite tanky versus physical damage dealers. So that's always nice. Leap of Faith are obviously very strong, and if you're playing with a warlock and he's going to be the target, you can sacrifice any of those points to get like move with grace, so you have a 1 minute like leap, which is quite strong. I do play with Angelic Feather because I have macros to help me land the feathers under me, but also while I'm doing a fade, so I'm actually very fast. I could land a fear, which you should not be able to if you're not playing with Angelic Feather. And then we have Body and Soul, which again I do power word shields often because it is a shield after all, and it's all instant, and it's a 6-second CD, and it shields quite a lot of damage actually. Overall, you can actually have a lot of healing because of that. We're playing with Twist of Fate, obviously for more damage. Vampiric Embrace, very strong. You should like really consider thinking about when you're using Vampiric Embrace because it actually heals a ton. And then we have a Sane Lane, which basically is going to improve your Vampiric Embrace. We're also playing with Teeth Evasion. You kind of have to because you're going to spam like your deaths and you don't want to kill yourself, so you have to play with that. Unfortunately, Mind Blast is not something you want to cast too often because you don't have the time for that. You want to maintain your DOS, you want to do your Catharsis procs, you want to do Devouring Plagues, you want to do a Void Torrent if you can to, Insanity if you can to. You don't have a lot of time to do Mind Blast. So unfortunately, even though this looks quite nice on paper, you're not going to do that. And I also play every single aggressive talent on the class tree. I think it's like super important. Shadow Priest is, I think, in my opinion, you don't have to play very scared. It depends on your healer, to be honest, but I really like Mind Games and improving it. It does insane damage, especially if you have like your Dark Ascension, you're doing a Mind Games go, you have like all 3 dots on the target. Mind Games into a Void Torrent is going to kick you, then you have a Mind Spike Insanity, you're going to be good to go. If they don't have a kick, if they don't have a possibility to stop you, you're going to decimate someone. Also, Mind Games very strong on healers. You're doing that on a healer to make them dispel or to eat it, and he's going to not heal their target. So it's actually very strong as well. Very strong on, let's say, a shaman, for example, because he has like a talent that automatically heals him whenever he's low HP. So it can proc on Mind Games and effectively just kill himself because of that, which is actually very strong as well. Improve fade, of course. You want to fade as much as you can. It's 20 seconds. Reduces damage you take by 10%, which is quite nice as well. And that's for the whole duration. So for 10 seconds, you're going to have 10% reduced damage. Again, very welcome. And you will have like a 50% uptime in the games, like a reduced damage taken, which is again something that some specs don't have. So again, you should like cherish a few things that you are going to get. I don't like that talent, Crystalline Reflection. It is whatever, but you need Angelic Bulwark, so I take that. In 2s, you could actually just remove those points and actually remove Twist of Fate, and you can play a bit more defensively, but you have to sacrifice another point here. And I would sacrifice, for example, Improve Fate to get Powered Life, so you can actually Powered Life yourself or your friends. It does help. Personally, I'm not playing with a double DPS as Priest. I like to play with a healer, and I feel like I don't like lose a lot of damage because of that. So I really like the build that I'm playing right now, and I usually don't change a lot of things. On the spec tree, that's something that it might be a bit controversial because I feel like I'm playing like very aggressive, and this build is very aggressive. Let's talk point by point. So Top 3, nothing will change. I do play with Psychic Link, and it actually does a lot of damage overall, like in social fall, because you're going to dot everyone anyways, and you have some good direct damage as well, so it's going to be noticeable that sometimes you're going to do 30Ks, 40Ks on like a separate target, and it can be nice to have that because it opens up to a switch, it opens up to your ally also cleaving. I like Psychic Link, it got buffed. To be honest, I don't like Mind Melt because you're not spamming Mind Spike. It's also very hard to do so, especially if you're playing with a melee. Yes, you have PvP talents that kind of wants you to spam Mind Spike, but I don't feel like it justifies the talent, especially since Mind Blast, even if it crits, it's not going to be very impressive. You have also a few talents here. You have Shadow Apparition. There is a build that you can play around Shadow Apparitions. To be honest, I'm not really impressed, but I can understand why people play that. Mind Devourer, I think the percent is too low, 5% or 10% on Mind Blast. Something you're not spamming anyways is too low. It feels like a PvE talent, and it is probably a PvE talent. And it would be nice to have Devouring Plague cost no insanity and deal 20% additional damage, but it's not realistic. It's not happening in most games. So you're not going to take that. I tested it. It felt bad. It felt like I got a proc, like just one proc every game, which is way too low, and it was me being free cost, so I don't like that. And this is nice if you're like thinking like periodic damage is going to land you kills. In my opinion, it doesn't land you kills. It just pad. It's nice to have, but it is pad. It's only periodic shadow effects, so I don't take that. I like a Psychic Link. Why do you play Dark Ascension? Because we do direct damage, and it is a 1-minute CD, and overall also generates 30 insanity, so you can do Dark Ascension into a Devouring Plague into your Go, for example. So you don't need to wait out to that you have like enough insanity to use that. And Void Eruption, it is strong because Void Bolt is actually very strong. And it's a 2-minute CD. That's the only problem I have. Since it's a 2-minute CD, I personally don't feel like it's something you want to purchase. So for me, Dark Ascension, 1-minute CD, very reliable. I like it. I wish it was instant, but it is not instant. But it is what it is. It's a lot of damage actually. 25% increased damage is a lot of damage. So there is that. A Vampiric Touch deals 30% additional damage. It is something that is going to improve your misery and your, where is the spell? Unfurling Darkness. So again, it's something you want to take anyways. It's 2 points, and also generates you insanity, which is something you're going to need to do damage. And we're playing with Distorted Reality. I know some people play with Mind's Eye, which is reducing the insanity cost of Devouring Plague, but let's be honest, it's going to make them 50 insanity, 45 insanity instead of 50 insanity. And if you take this, it's going to make 55 insanity instead of 50. But this is increasing the damage of Devouring Plague. This is going to make it also last longer, which is easier to have your mastery and easier to have Insidious Ire. It's overall an easier talent to play around and to not be scared of, oh, my Devouring Plague is going to fall down. No, I have less damage on my Void Torrents. I prefer to play around that. It does more damage. Instantly, it does a lot of damage. Dot damage, it's kind of the same because it deals the damage over 12 seconds instead of like 5 seconds, I think, or 6 seconds. But I personally like that. Like, since I play that, I didn't touch it. That's how fun it was. We play Void Torrent, obviously. Insidious Ire, which increases the damage that you can do with your Mind Blast and your Void Torrent whenever you have like those 3 dots on the target. Obviously, you want to cast Void Torrent whenever you have those 3 dots on the target, which is going to be affected by Mastery and by this and by a lot of like modifiers, like for example Dark Ascension. We do play Idol of Cthulhu. It does some okay damage. It's not like something that's going to be insane, but it does generate insanity and does a bit of damage. It slows the target down. Overall, it's a big win. Why not Malediction? First and foremost, you don't really have a lot of points to spare, and you're not going to cast Void Torrent on CD. You want to be careful at that because you don't want to get kicked first and foremost. You want to have full value, so you don't want to avoid torrent every 30 seconds because first and foremost they're going to kick you, so you're going to have a very bad sag moment. And you want to choose and pick your moments whenever you're going to do a void torrent. Either you're going to bait it for a kick and you want to do a mind spike insanity, or you do it because you have like a full void torrent available without getting stopped, or you're playing with another caster which effectively is going to give you a full void torrent by itself. But it's very strong, so you have to play around that. I don't feel like you need the 30 seconds. Yes, you have more opportunity to use it, but you're not using it on CD anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's not like something you're going to do it regardless. It's a channel. You want to do a full channel on someone, and if you're doing a full channel, someone is about to die. That's pretty much it. Or he has to pop a CD or whatever. We're playing with Screams of the Void. It's going to increase your insanity because of the amount of hits you're going to have with Vampiric Touch and your Shadow Pain. I also played without it. You could play without it and still have insane value with Mindbender, Inescapable Torment. That is interesting. The issue I have with that is it does damage, but it doesn't feel like it's like damage I'm winning over taking Screams of the Void. So there is again, you can play both builds, and this build is also working. But it feels like, again, you need to be very free cast to be able to have a lot of impact on it, because Mind Blast and Shadow Death is going to cause you Mindbender to TP onto the target. But Mind Blast is not something you're going to cast all the time, and Shadow Death is something you're going to cast all the time though, but I don't know if it's just, like, you can justify the damage you can have on your Mindbender. So there is that. And this talent is a bit useless since they got nerfed it, and since overall Mindbender build got nerfed. You could also play with Mindburner at just 1 point in Screams of the Void. That's also an option if you want to. To be honest, I like Shadow Fiend. Although it's a long CD, it does a lot for me. Because whenever I'm doing my go, I need insanity, and it generates a bit more insanity. This is just going to generate insanity more often in the whole duration of the match, pretty much. Actually, it's the same, to be honest, but I like Screams of the Void. Anyways, I like it for the insanity generation. And that's it, pretty much. The other talents are not really worth to discuss. We're not playing Shadow Crash. It's super annoying to play around. You have to sacrifice 2 points to get that, and I don't even know which one I want to sacrifice. You could sacrifice Mental Decay, I guess, but I don't like it. I feel like people dispel anyways. People dodge it anyways. It's super clunky as well. I don't like it. It's not like Vampiric Touch is something I need to have on the target. It's something I want to have on target, but I'm not going to go out of my way to get like a shitty talent that is also going to interfere with my Tierset. It's fine. There is that. Let's talk about PvP talents really quickly. Catharsis is a instant pick for me until I know if I'm not the target or if I'm the target or not. If I'm I assume I am the target all the time, so I will have a lot of value on Catharsis. It's always going to be 10% of my damage, and it's going to be additive with also the Tierset, which is going to do also a lot of damage for me. Overall, it's a fantastic talent. People are going to notice, look, Catharsis does a lot of damage, we need to go on someone else. And whenever Shadow Priest is free to cast, it makes a lot more easier to land CC, a lot more easier to go for fear, a lot easier to control the match. So I'll play with Catharsis. If they go for me, I do a lot of the damage. If they don't go for me, I will do less damage, but I'm still going to control the match a bit easier. So I like Catharsis. It is also something that is working very well with the Tierset, and that's something I want to play around. Psyfiend. Psyfiend is something depending on who you're facing and if they're like keeping it alive or not. Basically, if they break Psyfiend, you want to change it because you don't want to have a Psyfiend up for 1 second. It's dumb and it's a PvP talent being wasted. But if they're not breaking it, especially at lower MMR, play that because it's like the best value you can have as a Shadow Priest. It's 50% reduced healing, 50% movement speed, reduction. It does some okay damage, let's be honest. It's only like 12% overall, but whatever. And there is that. The issue is with Siphon is it's only 30k HP, so it's only one hit, to be honest. And you cannot shield it. Before you could shield it, and it made like it very difficult to kill Siphon. But right now, like you can just one hit it with even a slam, so it's not that important to play if they break it constantly. If they don't break it, it's okay. Or if you play with a rogue and he has like full control on the whole team, you can have like a 5-second prop Siphon or a 4-second Siphon, and that's also a good value. Or if you kite it correctly, you do Siphon at the start and you are like portaling out, they're going to follow you, so they're going to let the Siphon go, and that is also going to be a full value Siphon for you. So you have to play around it. But if I'm not playing Siphons, I do play with Mind Trauma. You kind of have to spam some Mind Spikes though. Or a full Void Torrent could also give you 3 stacks. I like that. It's good haste. It reduces haste on the enemy target as well. It's overall a good talent. People play that more often without without Catharsis. But I feel like if you're playing in a comp where you're going to be the target, Catharsis is going to be huge value anyways. Absolute Faith is something I could take in some matchups, but I feel like I don't want to group up 3 of my friends into a DH that is going to do a triple stun. So often or not, I don't play that as well. It's also it's a good shield, and that's it. But overall, again, interesting. Void Volley, also interesting. If you're playing versus double melee, you're going to have some value with it, and they're going to go for you. It's going to give you a good value. I think it would be better if it was instant, but it is not the case. But this is going to give you a bit of time to cast, or you're going to do okay damage on it. And overall, it's going to be a good value talent. Thought Steal is very interesting if you're playing, let's say, versus a resto druid. You can also steal Rejuve, or you can steal Polymorph from a mage. You have a few things that you can actually steal. Like, for example, you can steal Fear from a warlock. Again, a warlock that is like very fear happy is going to tell themselves like, where is my fear for 20 seconds, and it can help you to land kills, right? But that's also something I'm going to insta-lock. Driven to Madness is interesting if you're playing versus 2 DPS, the 2 melee DPS. But the problem I have is that you don't have enough PvP talents to justify it, and it's not like you could like spam Dark Ascension, but it's not always like needed, because it's already hard to cast it anyways. And last but not least, we have Phase Shift, which is the most important talent in the spectrum, like in PvP talents. I use Fade with my Angelic Feather, which effectively is going to make me Speedy Gonzalez for a few seconds and get like a CC that is most likely going to land in a kill, for example, which is quite nice. I like Phase Shift. It saves me countless times. If someone does the hunt on me, I Phase Shift instantly, no damage done. And you can see the hunt like from a mile away. Everyone starts with the hunt at the start of the game. If you Phase Shift that's a lot of damage gone. So just play around the DPS doing their damage. For example, if you see a DH going on you and he just did Essence Break, more likely he's going to do a Death Sweep. So you have to fade the Death Sweep, because then the damage is going to be gone and reduced to just smithereens. So just play around that. Try to Phase Shift the last portion of the Death Sweep, so you have less amount of damage going to go for you. So it's very strong as well. Anyways, let's talk about comps. Twos, you have choices. Again, I talked more in depth with my 2v2 comp videos for a healer, with a healer and double DPS. But double DPS, you can play with a rogue. You can have some very good games with it. You can also play with a affliction warlock. That's kind of fun, although it's a bit less fun for the affliction warlock. You can also play with elemental shaman. You can play with a balanced druid. You can play with a devastation evoker. So double DPS, you have choices, but you have to remind yourself you're going to play like a support pretty much. You need to play around your CDs. Damage is like on the back foot anyways. It does damage. You can do some okay healing, but you have to play around your CDs because you're going to be the target, or your ally is going to be the target. So you need to know whenever you're going to use your CDs, and you have to be coordinated. In 2v2, I play more often with a healer. I do like to play with a preservation invoker, it does a lot of damage for me, or with a resto shaman, which also does a lot of damage for me, and he can also just lasso the kill target. I do my CC rotation on the healer, and then we have like both CC at the same time, which effectively gives me time to do a full void torrent or a full mind games into a void torrent, or Bite Spike Insanity. So you have ways to play. It's a bit of a dampening gum, but again, if you use your Psyfint, because you have to use Psyfint in 2v2 with a healer, you're going to land kills that you should maybe not land those kills, but it's because of CC that you can actually provide that to your allies. 3v3, my preferred comp will always be Shadow Play, because I just love playing that comp, but I think most successful comps that you can have is probably with a rogue. So our RPS with rogue, priest, shaman is going to be very interesting to play. You have also some good caster comps that you can play as well, but that's all, like, I would not say details. It's something you have to see for yourself, right? You have to know, look, I'm going to play more with a melee, and then I'll be the target like all the time, and I will have to try to survive, and my melee will have to peel for me. Or I play with a caster and it's like 50-50. Sometimes you're the target and your other caster is going to have a field trip, or the enemy is or he is the target and you are going to have a field trip. But you have to play around your strength and try to play for peels. You don't want to just deal damage, you want to also help with healing, you want to shield of power shield, you want to leap them, you want to be able to heal them with Vampiric Embrace. So you have to play around your strength. But I think personally, I like to play Shadow Play. If you have a choice to play Shadow Play, you can play with an Affliction Warlock or a Destruction Warlock. I think those two comps are fantastic. With the Demonology Warlock, it's a bit of dampening though, and you have to like it, I would say. And with a melee, you could also play with Warrior or DH of a DK, and that's pretty bursty. You can actually just win in the opener with your CC. So that's also a possibility. And there is that. Let's now talk about Soul Shuffle. What's the place of Shadow Priest in Soul Shuffle? I made a Soul Shuffle tier list. I kind of stand by it. I do feel like Shadow Priest is not like the fantastic spec it could be, but I would say the better you are on Shadow Priest, the more likely you're going to climb very fast, because it is based on CC, on CD usage, and just your knowledge as a spec. If you know that you're going to get trained and there is no way for me to run away, just stand still and try to cast. Make it easier for the healer to position themselves. You don't want to like kite and then your healer has to position themselves constantly for you to not get CC'd with you. And it's not like you're going to avoid a lot of damage, except with your fade, and sometimes you can fade Angelic Feather and you're going to leave someone into the dust. That depends also for the other DPS to CC, root, snare, or use a CC to actually help you with getting away. But also in Soul Shuffle, you can just stand still. You're going to soak up damage anyways. Try to use fade on important stuff, for example, Chaos Bolt, a Death Sweep, a juke, or if you feel like you're going to get cheap shotted, you can fade it, for example. You have ways to play around. Fade is actually very strong, but you have to be smart on it. Just don't fade like nothing. Just try to fade something that is going to be useful to fade and to avoid damage. Try to also not hog too much on your CDs, because your CDs does come back quite fast. It's a 1.5 minute CD, but you have to be smart. Like dispersing is very important, but you don't want to cast at 20% HP and getting kicked. So you have to be aware, being like in danger and not casting and just spamming Shadow Word Pain for the Catharsis procs and the Forced procs, and Shadow Word Death as well, and Devouring Plague, like instants that you can actually do. Just do them and you can land some kills, and sometimes you can just like bait with Flash Heal. So you can also Flash Heal yourself, he's going to kick you, and then you can have a full value like Void Torrent, for example. So there is that. Soul Shuffle, you have ways to win. I'm going to talk about the rotation really quickly. To be honest, it's a caster. There is no real rotation, but I'm going to say what you want to do. So at the start of the match, I try to power word shield myself always. It's always going to be important because it does soak up a bit of damage. It does some torn damage, but that's not really torn damage I mean like with Catharsis, it does a lot of damage whenever I'm doing a Catharsis. It's going to add damage from my Tierset and also from the Catharsis proc that I get because of getting targeted. So what I do at the start of a match is I'm trying to do a Vampiric Touch from afar. If someone doesn't make me, like, they don't let me do that, I will try to just Shadow Pain everyone. It's very important because that is going to add damage overall. It's going to be important for started up just your damage as well. That's super important. Mind Spike is something I'm not going to cast too much, except if I'm playing with Mind Trauma or if I'm playing with a caster that makes them like the target. But overall, you want to double dot, triple dot even, and if they are dispelling, he's going to get horrified. You want to just cast it again. If they're going to go on you, you're obviously not going to be free cast, or you're going to have some difficulties. So what you will do is, again, keep the dots up. You want to Shadow Pain anyways. If he's getting dispelled, just Shadow Pain directly, and that's also good damage. And what you want to do is, again, have those dots up. And then whenever you have a Devouring Plague up, you just do Devouring Plague, do a Shadow Death whenever you can. And you're going to do some good damage overall, and you want to maintain your dots. But you don't want to maintain your dots at any cost. You want to maintain your dots on your kill target the most, because that is the kill target. You're not doing AoE damage, or you can, like, very subpar AoE damage. You just want to have your dots up so you can always switch whenever you want. And whenever you're doing a Devouring Plague, you see the extra damage you get from the link is actually very noticeable from Psychic Link. So for example, here it's linked. If I'm doing damage, it's going to do damage also as well here, 36k, it's quite big. So AoE, it's always going to be interesting. So what I want to do is basically have the dots on everyone. You want to build up your insanity, and if you don't want to build up too much, you're going to use your powered infusion. Then you're going to do a Dark Ascension into a Mind Games, and then into a Devouring Plague, into a Void Torrent. That's a lot of damage already. And then he's going to kick you, or he's going to do something to stop you. Mind Spike Insanity, you have also your Shadow Pain to do, and you see, like, my damage is really, really high. Of course, it is on a dummy, of course I'm not going to get stopped, but often my games end up with me being somewhat okay DPS wise, or somewhat like above everyone DPS wise, depending on who I'm facing. And the damage is really, really high. And you want to do Shadow Death whenever you can, especially if you have Death Speakers, because you have Death Torment, which is the Tierset that increases your damage of Shadow Pain by a gross amount. And if you have like everything on the target, and you're going to have a Catharsis proc, you can just do a Shadow Pain, and it does a lot of damage by itself. Again, you want to maintain your Devouring Plague whenever you can. You want to actually cast it whenever you can, because you want to have those Mind Spike Insanities. You need 2 Devouring Plagues to be able to do a Mind Spike Insanity. So for example, I already did a Devouring Plague. Now I have another Devouring Plague that needs to be done to have the Mind Spike Insanity. So I'm going to try to build towards that. I'm going to do a Mind Games, into a Mind Blast, into a Shadow Death, into Devouring Plague. I have Mind Spike Insanity, and then I can just do a lot of damage, which is really, really high. So overall, the damage patterns that you can see is Shadow Pain does, like for example here, 200k normal hit. If it critted, it would be higher. In general, in PvP, it is halved, so it will be 100k normal hit. If it does crit, it is around 180k, 170k, something like that. And yes, if you can like have a 12 stacks, which is not often, but if you get a 12 stack Shadow Pain with a Catharsis, you're going to delete someone if it crits. That's it. Shadow Death does a lot of damage in PvP as well, so I already critted for 160k, and it's something you can spam. It's instant, so it does a lot of damage. Vampiric Touch does around 100k damage to the Infernal Darkness, so the proc that you get from doing one Vampiric Touch. This one, you can just do it here. It does around 100k, something like that, whenever you're doing your burst with your Dark Ascension. And overall, you're doing like insane amount of damage, and you're going to do Mind Games into a Devouring Plague, and then you can do a Void Torrent if you're free from any kicks, or if you want to bait pretty much someone. It does a lot of damage, that's for sure. So Psychic Link also very interesting to have, because you want to cleave, but if it's not possible, it is what it is. Void Torrent by itself, it does insane damage. Like, it does 500k without a crit on a dummy. I'm going to be honest, it's more around 300k, 350k, maybe 400k if you get like a lucky crit here and there. but you're never going to have a full value void torrent except if they let you. So if that happens, it's going to be like a birthday pretty much. Mind games does insane damage. Like also in PvP, you're going to do some gross mind games, and the dispel itself is good, but the instant damage you can have from mind games is what I'm looking for. So I really like that. It's also something like people are going to kick regardless. So you get like a free mind spec insanity if you have like that prepared for your match. And I want to talk really briefly about the macros. Again, like rotation wise, try to maintain your dots. Try to do mind spec insanities whenever you can. It's very important to not get kicked on it, because you can then get kicked on everything. Devouring Plague, every time you get like enough insanity to do so. Your Dark Archangel, your Dark Ascension, excuse me, use it whenever you're going to try to do a burst rotation with your mind games and your void torrent. You can also start with the match with this. It's a 20-second duration, by the way, so again, very big. If you're playing with badge, try to pair it together with a Dark Ascension. It's very important. And just overall, you can have a lot of damage by just simply doing your rotation and try to avoid a lot of CC. There is that. Shadow Pain, again, does a lot of damage because of the force set, because of Catharsis. Try to spam it, to be honest. I spam Shadow Pain and Catharsis all the time, because again, Catharsis is 100k free damage, but also in general you want to maintain Shadow Pain on everyone, because it is pad damage, but it also just adds up at the end of the match, right? So I'll play that as well. Mind Blast is not as important, like I said. You want to do Mind Blast whenever you can, but trust me, if you're the target, you're not going to like cast Mind Blast most of the time, because it is just not worth the damage. It's more worth to keep your dots up, try to do Devouring Plagues, try to do your Catharsis procs, try to do your CC, try to do your Mind Games or Void Torrent, than just do Mind Blast as a filler. Obviously your Insanity is interesting to have, but you will not run out of Insanity like anyways, right? So there is that. Now let's talk about macros. I think it's very important. There are a few macros, and I think you already saw like one. The Mind Games one is actually very cool. You can pause the video and then copy it like this, because again, I'm not going to remind myself to put it in the description, but this is a ping macro, and I'll have that on my warrior as well, on Sharpened Blade for example. This is going to basically ping the target that I'm attacking with Mind Games. So you will have like, you will see like something like this. You see? And I'm spamming it so people know, look, he's going to get Mind Games. Or look, I'm going to attack this one. Sometimes I use it on the healer, and then they know, okay, now I'm going to switch on the healer. And often or not, it works. People notice those pings. I like to play with pings because I'm coming also from League of Legends, like back in the day, and also right now I still play League of Legends. Pings are very important, and I hope World of Warcraft will make pings more easier to be playing with. But you can make pings macros for everything. You can have a ping attack macro, a ping help macro, you have also a ping go, if I'm not mistaken. You have multiple things that you can do. For example, as a shaman, I think pings are very important. I might also talk about it like on a separate video. But this is helping me a lot. Like a use to be honest, it should be a cost, but whatever, use is also good. Use at target Mind Games, ping at target attack, and then I also do a /BG, which is like instance, so arenas or BGs in general. It will be typing Mind Games. I know not everyone is like watching the chat. That's all right. It doesn't matter, but it's like extra information just in case if someone watches the chat, they will see Mind Games, and that is up. What would be cool is also that they could. Oh, oops. What would be cool is also that it could show the icon of Mind Games at one point, like a ping macro of Mind Games. That would be actually lit, but I don't know if they're going to do that at one point. But that would be actually very great, that if you're doing it, that it will be written attack and then Mind Games above the target. That would be actually a very neat implementation of the ping system. But that is what it is though. Let's talk about the other macros. Let's talk about a few tips as well. You want to stun, silence, fear your healer, like the enemy healer, at all times. You don't want to use your silence on the DPS because it gets dispelled anyways. You do want to stun your DPS, but it gets dispelled anyways. So use your stun on the healer, get a silence up, get a fear, and silence is off GCD. So if you're pressing silence, it's off GCD. If I'm pressing my stun, it will be GCD. So for example, if I'm like flash healing, you see the silence. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can. You cannot see it, but whatever. I'm going to move it for you guys. Here you see silence, right, on my bars. So if I'm pressing my flash heal, it doesn't get a GCD. Like the same for void shift, doesn't have a GCD. So if you are casting, you have no excuse to do a silence. You have no excuse. You can actually just like cast it, even if you're like busy. You don't have a GCD. So be sure to stun, then you can cast, and at the same time do a silence whenever you are done with casting, for example. And then you can proceed to a fade angelic feather with a fear. If he's close. If he's not close, don't bother with it. You don't want to cross 30 meters to get a fear, but you want it to get closer and closer and closer. If it doesn't work, if the resto druid is very good, it is what it is. Just play around it and try to fear the DPS, so you have a bit of breathing room. The only, from what I played and from what I like to play, my fear is the only CC I can actually use on the DPS. The stun and the silence, I try to limit myself to do a focus macro on them at all times. Yes, sometimes you want to like use a silence on a chaos bot because you feel like it's now or never. You can always do that, but that's really if you're playing on the back foot. It's like the same, you don't want to blind the DPS, you want to blind the healer as a rogue in general. If you're blinding DPS defensively, you already kind of lost the game at that point, because you're defensively using ACC that is used in offensive situations. The same goes for the DPS with your Shadow Priest. If you're silencing and stunning of defensively on the DPS, you already lost like 30 seconds or a 1 minute go. It is what it is. It's only purely for surviving. It means that you already messed up somewhere, or your healer messed up somewhere, or your other DPS messed up somewhere. The only issue with Soul Shuffle is some people are like trigger happy with CC, and they use their CC on their healer instead of letting you CC the healer and he stormbolts the DPS. But you can always communicate that in Soul Shuffle. Some people read it, some people don't, but it is what it is. Here I have Dark Ascension with 14, use 14, so it's my badge. Always going to be useful. To be honest, it's better to use 14 before because it's a cost. So you can also actually get it out. You can do that, and then you have like the badge at the same time. So it does a lot of damage for you. I really like that macro. Also have a focus macro Shadow Word Death, so if I feel like I'm getting polymorphed, I can always do a Shadow Word Death focus macro, so I don't need to target someone or whatever to get out of CC. I like that as well. I use that for my Disc Priest more often because I'm not getting polymorphed as a Shadow Priest. I get focused as a Shadow Priest, so that often doesn't need to be pressed. We have also a Fade macro, which is cast Fade, cast at player Angelic Feather, which effectively gives us Fade plus Angelic Feather, and since Fade removes slows, it will give you directly like some speed to go to for Fear or try to run away the few damages that you're going to get as a Shadow Priest. Also very useful if you're playing a Disc Priest or a Holy Priest, by the way. We have Party 1 Void Shift, Party 2 Void Shift. It's very hard to know which one is Party 1 or Party 2 in Soul Shuffle, but you can always make like a dummy macro for Flash Heal to see which one is Party 1 and which one is Party 2, so you can actually remember. We have a Silence at Focus macro, very important because I do not try to silence the DPS. If I do that, it's really me messing up somewhere and I have to do that. But often or not, I use my Silence and my Stun at all times on the Focus. At all times, and this is also at focus macro for my stun. Again, if you're playing with a Retribution Paladin, that's the only way I could understand that you're going to Psychic Horror the DPS. But even then, you could also just Psychic Horror the DPS. He's hodging the you can Psychic Horror the healer. He's going to hodge the DPS, and then you're going to try to do a silence directly, so he doesn't have the time to dispel it. Automatically, you will get like 2 trinkets out. So I prefer that, but that's my opinion again. And you also have 2 separate CCs, so again, if they do trinket out the stun, you can always like silence directly. So they get like nothing out of it. While a Hajj, if they do get out of it, it does make it like hard to dispel, right? So there is that. I got like interrupted with WhatsApp, but it is what it is. Those are my macros pretty much. Like a party 1, party 2, forge shift is very important. I feel like you could have an arena arena 1, 2, 3 macro for silence and for stun. But I'm going to be honest again. I feel like the best way you can CC as a Shadow Priest is always on a healer. Like if you're doing that, you're going to win games regardless because of the hardness of Soul Shuffle healing and people not noticing someone getting CC'd. That's my opinion again. And also, if you want to switch on a healer, it's also super easy to do so because you're going to stun and then you're going to prepare your mind games and a silence, and you can do your whole go on a healer if you're free to go, and you can actually do your whole rotation. You can just delete someone or he has to pop all CDs. So there is that. So those are the tips, those are the macros, those are everything. This is pretty much the guide for Shadow Priest. If you have any questions, please do let me know in the comment section below. I have multiple gameplays ready to also launch on a channel for Shadow Priest. You will see some 3s, you will see some 2s, you will see some Soul Shuffle. I want to focus a bit more on Shadow Priest because I feel like you guys need some love with explaining a few things, with motivating yourself to play Shadow Priest and to get better over time. Again, I think casters in general are really fun to play, and once you get over the fact that you're getting the focused every single time, you can actually have some great time playing Shadow Priest. But again, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet, and we will catch you probably very soon in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.